Hello and welcome. This video will be for beginners who are coming to Buddhism from outside, people who don't have a Buddhist background and they just want to learn about what the Buddha taught. You search on the internet, you find a lot of information, but it's hard to just shift through what's right and what's wrong, what's true and false. So I will just give some tips about that and general directions on how to handle all this information and how you should approach the early Buddhist text and generally what Buddhism is even about. So this will be like a general and basic guide. So you are curious about Buddhism and you search for things what the Buddha taught. You find some stuff, you read, but what you will generally find is what monks, teach. You want to learn about Buddhism, you will find like endless amounts of monks teaching their own take on what the Buddha taught, and there will be like a lot of differences. A monk says one thing and other monk says another thing, and between the traditions, different traditions, these will like vary a lot. There will be a lot of variations in what you will find as Buddhism, then you will like want to know about what the historical Buddha actually taught. I want to know about that, you search for the scriptures, and usually the first things you will find will be the Mahayana sutras, like the Lotus Sutra and the Heart Sutra. And if you read those sutras, they are actually very nihilistic, I should say, and they are mostly very diametrically opposed to stuff you will find in what we call early Buddhist texts. So if you think Heart Sutra and Lotus Sutra is what the Buddha taught, that's not the case. So what you should look for is, now this information should be available to anyone and everywhere. What are the early Buddhist texts, but you will often find people hiding, actively hiding that information from you, and that's a very sad thing. So what you should be looking for as early Buddhist texts are the Sutta Pitaka, okay, or the Nikayas. You could search for the Nikayas. There are 5 Nikayas. These are like collections of the Buddha's discourses. And they are like the 4 main ones and the one with the little collections. And one collection looks something like this. And there are like 5 collections like this. This is one collection you should be looking for. For example, this is the Samyutta Nikaya by Bhikkhu Bodhi. This should be like the first introduction, okay, to Buddhism, ideally, but you won't find that suggestion. Read the suttas. 9 out of 10 people won't give you that suggestion, and that is not good. But you should read them. in order to understand the Buddha's teachings, you should like immerse yourself in those teachings. There is really no other way around. So you, let's say, you take that and you start reading, but you will find yourself that a lot of stuff in those suttas are way over your head, let's say. So what you should do? So what you should do, you should find some monks, monastics that who know what they're talking about. They can help you like make sense of the suttas, and there are like very widespread. Let's say there are a lot of information on that. You can find many channels on YouTube just sutta studies with proper monks. This is the direction you should like start with, but before going there, there are a lot of dead ends, so to speak, and you will find those. You can find those very attractive at times. For example, going to those vipassana retreats where you introduce some meditation technique. Let's say you can't make sense of the Buddha's teachings, but then you find this meditation technique very attractive then because it is easy to follow. Okay. Then you can be stuck with that. With just let's say this mechanical actions, just following them half an hour a day, just keep repeating, just and hoping that some enlightenment will happen, through this repetition of mechanical actions. But that's not going to happen. There are like many people just stuck in that dead end. And you can do that for 10 years, 20 years, and nothing happens, and you can be like very resented. So that's not a good thing. Okay, you should not do anything, or actually you shouldn't spend your time in anything that you don't understand. Okay, somebody tell you that you do this stuff, okay, this stuff, and something else, this stuff will happen, but you don't see any direct connection, then you should not do that. By you should not do that, I am talking about things like, spending time in these meditation methods and this, chanting steps. You can spend hours doing those things, like these rituals, these I don't know, these rituals, these ceremonies, whatever. You can spend a lot of time in doing those things. You should avoid them. But you should also avoid doing things what the Buddha told you to avoid. Like you should keep the precepts. These are always good, even if you don't know how they relate to enlightenment. Let's say keeping the precepts is always wholesome, because they directly relate to the development of the mind. Now, that is actually the way to enlightenment, development of the mind. And how can you do that? Now, you start reading the suttas, and like I said, most of them will be way over your head, because the Buddha directed those teachings to actually very spiritually advanced disciples, let's say. Most of them, like 80% of the teachings of the Buddha, were not directed at just anybody. And Buddhism, as the historical Buddha taught, was mainly for ascetics and spiritual searchers, mainly not worldly people. Okay, he also gave, worldly people a lot of suggestions and whatnot, but that's not the main point of Buddhism. And that is usually the first obstacle I have when discussing these things with other people, other Buddhists even. They just reject that idea because they want to believe that they can get this enlightenment without making much effort, without making radical changes, without restraining their behavior. They want to believe that they can just follow this technique and the enlightenment will just happen magically. That is a very attractive idea. But that is a dead end. And the first discourse of the Buddha, like the first lines, he said, suffering is to be understood. That is the way, really. So you should avoid doing things that are not related to understanding. Okay. Repeating this mantra, how would that lead to understanding? It won't. So some people just want to do this meditation. They stop, their thinking somehow. They just freeze their mind or something. But how will that lead to understanding? Even the worldly sense. Okay, think of understanding mathematics, for example. Can you do that without studying? But you can't also do that by just memorizing. Okay, understanding is a different thing. You can immerse yourself, but you will need to also make an effort to understand. That's a very important. You will need to just look for, just review your mind and look for what you don't understand, okay, and clarify them. This is like the main work, but this is very subtle to a lot of people. So people just want something very concrete, like, even though it sounds magical, this magical mantra, this magical lama or teacher, it will just transfer you this enlightenment. They're just, okay, this seems easy because it is not, it seems palpable to them. But the work is very subtle. So you need to reformat your whole worldviews. And this is another very important thing. People don't want to give up their views, usually. And they want to keep their views, and they want a sect of Buddhism that would just fit their views. And you won't get anywhere with that mindset, really. So if you are not willing to change your views, change your attitudes, change your whole world upside down. Buddhism really has nothing to offer to you. So you should be willing to do that from the start. And you introduce yourself to the teachings of the Buddha, and you shouldn't think that you just understand what those words mean. Okay, when the Buddha says something, you shouldn't just assume the Buddha means what you think it means at the first glance. Usually, your understanding of the teachings will be very insufficient. You will need to think them over and keep gaining new perspectives on them, and just fill the blanks in your understanding by reading other suttas and listening to monks who know what they're talking about. I suggest listening to monks in Hillside Hermitage and the publications of Pet Press. You can find a lot of good stuff in there, a lot of in-depth and very detailed. You can immerse yourself in these teachings, and in time you will gain perspective. But it will not happen automatically. It will not happen by just following these repetitions or just chanting these mantra. You will need to make an effort to understand the teachings. So this might seem a minor point, but your views, okay, what you think, what is right and what's wrong, you just take those for granted. That can just inhibit your development, okay? If you have just this solid view and you won't change your mind, For example, I see a lot of people think eating meat is equals to murder. If you have that view, it means you think the Buddha is also murderer, and you still want to be a Buddhist. You keep just a lot of double think in your mind. You think the Buddha was wrong, for example, in some things. If your views conflict with the Buddha, you should question your views. That's what you need to do. If you think the Buddha is wrong, there is really no way that you will get to that understanding. Okay. You need to be willing to change and adopt your views. I'm not saying just blindly accept what the Buddha, but you should question. Okay. Maybe you are wrong. You are wrong. No. It is usually better to assume that you are wrong and the Buddha is right, because the Buddha is enlightened and you are not enlightened. And if you are not willing to accept that position, that you are not coming from the position of knowledge, you are inferior, okay? You are completely submerged in ignorance, then the Buddha really has nothing to offer to you. Because the whole path is about unsubmerging yourself from that ignorance that you are in right now. If you are completely denying that, you want to keep denying that, and you are just wasting your time, okay? And you should not waste your time.